Hi everybody, my name is Tsupros. I'm really glad that you decided to join the Urban Growers Collective Herbal series. I am here to just instill some and share some of my knowledge with you about culinary and medicinal herbs, and this is a little intro video. When I talked to Laurelyn about this, I was really excited. She was really excited to kind of think through how this series could support our farmers that are already growing things, and how we could talk about creating more value-added products with herbs. So this series, the next two live Zoom classes, will definitely be geared toward that, but I wanted to do a little intro video just in case we have people who are new to growing and new to harvesting. So just a quick video. We're going to talk about some common plants that you can grow for topical and internal uses. We're going to talk about harvest techniques, drying techniques, and storing techniques. Hopefully we can wrap it up in 10 quick minutes. So to start out with, if you are already a grower or a farmer, you know the importance of acknowledging the land and the people that came before us who stewarded this land. So just to share with you, I currently am in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I had the great fortune of getting a house here in February, so I have a very brand new garden that I'm trying to cultivate to take to other places around so I can really grow a lot of medicinal herbs. But the land that I'm on currently was stewarded by the Ojibwe tribe before me. So I just wanted to acknowledge that that's very important, and they build a lot of beautiful relationships and reciprocity with the land, and that's what has enabled me to be a part of the land and care for the land as I do these days. There's a lot of really, really amazing plants here to forage and use medicinally, so I'm very grateful for that. The next thing I want to get into is just what I'm growing in my garden. So as I said before, I just moved here, so I just planted some starts and some things I propagated from my plants in Chicago, and also planted some seeds. So I'm going to start with showing you some of those, but I also want to give you a quick list. So feel free, if you want, to pause at any time as I'm showing you this list, but this is a list of plants that I use frequently. I split them up into culinary and things you can grow or forage. So feel free to pause and utilize this. We will be talking about some of these plants today. All right, next I am going to be taking both my tools, a basket, and some scissors, and giving you a quick tour of some plants in my garden. So this is my very small little garden. We've had a couple nights have already froze this year, that went below freezing this fall. So things are kind of winding down, but I'm gonna start over here with this herb garden. So just giving you a little tour. This is a beautiful valerian plant. This is motherwort. I actually am cultivating this beautiful dandelion. It just kind of popped up and I let it keep going. This is a chamomile plant. Got lavender, St. John's wort. This is called a feverfew. I have some sage and some oregano. And this is a crane's bill. And then this is nettle, stinging nettle. I also have over here some calendula growing. And there's a lot of other stuff, some rose that I'm growing. I like to use a lot of wild rose though. And this is kind of my mints, just a hint on mints. Oh, and there's my cannabis plant. Isn't she beautiful? Just a hint on mints. When you are cultivating mints, I would do so in a pot because they can really spread. So utilize that plant list. I'm going to turn this around. Utilize that plant list to make some decisions about what you want to grow. You can look at that list again because we're going to be talking a lot about topical plants in the next Zoom sessions and culinary plants. I think that you can make a lot of really great value-added product with those things. But for terms of this video, you might have access to various amounts of plants. And I just want to quickly show you some ways you can harvest those plants, because in herbal medicine, there's usually, and when you're like searching online, there's usually 3 suggested ways or 4 suggested ways, or you can use the medicine. So you will, or harvest the plant to use for medicine. you will see some plants and it says you should use the flower. And that's pretty obvious, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. You'll also see many resources say to utilize the top third of the plant. And so I'll show you how to harvest the top third of the plant. You'll see resources say use the roots, and then you'll see resources say use the bark. So we will not talk about the bark and the root today because that is a more invasive way of harvesting, and you really want to harvest specifically roots in the very early spring or late fall so you don't harm the plant. One plant that we do have here that I did show you was valerian. It's a really, really great plant to use for a sleep aid, but you use the root of that plant. Dandelion root is another one. You harvest the whole root. Dandelion I love because you can actually use the whole plant. But if you're using just the root medicine, you would harvest it and chop it up and dry it. I'm gonna quickly show you with two plants here. This is chamomile, and when you're harvesting just the flower, you can do a couple of things. You can take scissors and you can simply chop it, or things with like chamomile and calendula, you can simply just grab the beautiful flower off. Make sure not to take too much. Sometimes you get a little stim with it, and then I just like to throw it in my basket. It's really, really great. So when it says harvesting the flower, again, just simply pop off the plant. And the same thing with calendula. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna harvest some calendula. I have a lot of yellow calendula coming up and there's some orange over there. Calendula is one of those plants that the more you harvest, when you deadhead it, the more you harvest, the more the plant produces. All you do is you come here underneath and just kind of pop it off. Sometimes you'll get a little stem, you can cut it, but honestly, it just usually comes right off very easily. Just pop it off and you can just harvest it. I love to leave a little bit, some heads, because this will turn into seed. See how it's drying out? You leave some of the flowers on there, you'll dry it out, and then what happens is you get these beautiful seeds that then you can just use for next year. Like, these are pretty dry. I'm just gonna throw them into the ground and hopefully next year they'll self-seed. So that's flowers. The next thing I'm gonna show you really quick is a harvest technique when it says use the top third of the plant. A lot of times you will do this and there will be flowers on it. So you can use kind of the flower and you can use the leaves and you can use part of the stem. So for example, this is a nettle plant. Let's see if I can use this tripod. Can maybe kind of see. So I have this nettle plant, and for the nettle, I'm gonna use the top third. So I'm actually going to cut it off, the top third of the plant off. You wanna use nettle before, I'm gonna throw it in my basket. You wanna use nettle before it goes to seed. So again, just cutting off the top third, putting it in my basket. A lot of times with stinging nettle also, you want to use gloves because you will feel stings. I feel like I've gotten so used to it that it doesn't bother me that much anymore. We're gonna do this again with our motherwort. This motherwort is at the end of its season. I probably should let a lot of it just dry out because these flowers are going to seed. But motherwort, you can kind of see where I harvested it. I harvest the top third. So maybe a couple of weeks ago, I cut it off right there. I harvested the top third of the plant. I'm gonna let the rest of this go to seed because you just saw the example of nettle. But when it says you can use the top third, what that means is you can literally use the top third of that plant. So I would harvest it and I would dry the whole plant, leaves, stems, and flowers out together. Let's see here. The other thing I wanted to talk about was when it just says the leaves. So for example, raspberry leaf is a really great plant to use in teas for cramps, to help blood flow in the uterus. It's used a lot. It's called a woman's herb. And raspberry leaves, you don't want to harvest the whole cane of raspberry. You just want to harvest the leaves. So I'm going to show you, I had, this is kind of a crazy garden that I have going on here right now. It was currants and raspberries, and then I had these crazy nasturtiums that just totally took over. I did have raspberries in here. You can see these raspberries. Used red raspberries, and they're pretty small, not looking super great right now. But when you harvest raspberry leaves, let's go over here and harvest these ones because these are a little bit better. You literally, just like it says, harvest the leaves. So I would take my scissors and I would cut off just the leaf. It makes it a lot easier when you're drying if you have just the leaf to cut off and not the whole stem. And also raspberries can get spiky. It makes it hard. It makes it kind of tough. So I would just, maybe you could cut it off at the base and that won't hurt it. It won't hurt the stalk, so cut it off right here, or you can pick off each individual leaf. And then you would dry it just like that. So speaking of drying, I'm gonna take you inside now to show you some ways that I dry my herbs. So again, we're just talking about a couple common plants. We're talking about ways to harvest those plants, and we're gonna talk about some drying techniques when you're harvesting at a large amount. So one thing I really love is I love this drying rack. So I got it on Amazon. It's really great because you can clip it off and you can have different levels, so different lengths, but this is great for where you want to put your flowers. So I have tons of calendula I'm drying here. So you can put your flowers here. I have a reishi mushroom here. You can put stalks. You can put the upper third part in there too, but I do something else usually with that. I got garlic. I have sunflower stalks that I'm drying in here, and then lots of other, like a lot of nettle that I've dried in there. Another technique I utilize is just a brown paper bag. So you can put, if you have a lot of leaves, like those raspberry leaves, putting it in a brown paper bag in a dark spot, setting it there. Don't pack it too full because you do want to get airflow through there. But that's a great way to, it'll take a couple days to dry. Another thing that I like to do is I like to just take a bushel of them. This is goldenrod that I harvested, I foraged, and I just tied it, and then I'm hanging it. I put a loop on it, and then I'm hanging it from a nail. And that will dry out in about a week. And you can leave it there because it kind of looks good and it smells intoxicating. And then the last way I like to dry things is I like to just get something flat. You can take, I just use plastic lids here, so super easy and rudimentary. And I propped them up. And you can use a cookie sheet. You can use, if you have one of those flat baskets, that's a great one. And this is, again, just a goldenrod. I just laid it flat and it just kind of dried out. You want to make sure you don't pile things high because you want to make sure airflow gets to it. And then the other thing is you want to make sure, how do you know when it's dry, right? So I know that this is dry. You know when it's dry when you can kind of crunch it. When you take a leaf or a flower and it crumbles in your hand. See how that is making a noise? It's crumbling. The moisture content is out of it. So that is dry. It's really important that you make sure everything is dry, especially like things like calendula. They have these kind of really thick, kind of viscousy centers that retain moisture. So you want to make sure that that's all fully dried out. This is a fully dried out calendula. You will know it's just kind of breaks apart in your hand. So if you have something that just kind of breaks apart in your hand like this, that is when it's dry. If you do that and you feel any sort of moisture in it, then it's not dry and you need to keep drying it out. The risk you take if you store something that's not quite dry is it will go rancid. If you make medicine, usually quickly with it, usually it will be okay. But if you store herbs and they're not kind of quite dry, you can get a mold in there. And then all of your medicine is not usable. So the last thing, the last thing you need to do after making sure everything's dry, once it's all dry, and I'll do this pretty soon, is you'll take all of your herbs. I prefer to store them in as whole as possible. So this is my little herb room. Got lots of stuff going on here. But I have a cabinet that I put a lot of my stuff, my books, kind of my finished herbs or my stuff in process. And then I have a lot of my dried stuff. So some of the stuff is bought. Some of the more rare stuff of the some that's not common here that I can't grow, I will buy. And then I store stuff like this, just in jars. I label them. Lavender, you should always label and put the date of them. This one, it's calendula flower, but I didn't put the name. Shame on me. But you can use old Smucker's jars, right? Just make sure you wash them, put them in dishwasher or wash them in with soap and hot water to sterilize them. They're all dried, so it's not as big a deal. And these usually, depending on the herb, roots will store for 3 to 5 years. Flowers will usually store for a year to 2, and stems and leaves will usually store for a year or 2. So it's a really great way to store stuff and save it for later. Okay, I think that's it. I'm gonna sign off for now. Again, I look forward to doing some sessions with you. Session 1 on Zoom will be all about creating culinary oils. We're gonna make a culinary oil, a culinary vinegar with herbs, an infused, we're gonna make some finishing salts, so all of those will be culinary, and then we will make a topical infused oil with plantain and calendula, and that will be what we will use that oil for the following Zoom session, where we will be making a salve with that oil. So looking forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, and have a great day.